Hi, good morning. Today is December 14th, 2025. Um, Welcome to meditation class. Let's begin by setting our intentions, making aspirations today. By saying the Four Measurables prayer. May all beings
Beings have
have
happiness
happiness
and
and
the
the
causes
causes
of
of
happiness.
happiness. May
May all
all beings
beings
be
be free
free
from
from
suffering
suffering
and the
and the
causes
causes
of
of suffering.
suffering. May
May all
all
beings
beings not
not
be
be separated
separated
from
from
the happiness
happiness,
that
who
has
has never
never known
known
suffering.
suffering. May
May
they
they
rest
rest
in
in
equanimity,
equanimity, free
free
from
from
attachment,
attachment,
anger,
anger, and
and
aversion.
aversion. Okay, I'm going to read a quote. We've been talking a little bit about karma the last couple of weeks. And this is a quote from a great Buddhist master named Tinley Norbu Rinpoche. Um, Often in Buddhism, they talk about Buddhism, existing between nihilism and eternalism, really rejecting both nihilism and eternalism. Nihilism meaning, that we're basically just meat bags, you know, uh, that we're kind of an accident in the universe, and when we die, you know, everything dies. There's no more mind. There's no more. Uh, there's no Buddha nature. There's no, everything. It's just, you know, we were, basically, there's no difference between us and everything else in the universe, and like the inanimate things, and we just. How would you define that more? Nihilism.
Well, I think because it's the two limits of conceptual mind. One is that we say something is, the negative, the opposite of it is that something isn't. These are confines of conceptual constructs.
But nihilism you would define as what?
It's emptiness, like empty space, dead, empty space. In Buddhism, emptiness doesn't mean anything like that. Uh, you
Yeah, but
know,
nihilist philosophy is kind of that.
Nothing is meaningful.
Right.
There is no meaning in life.
Right.
we
That's what
we,
I'm getting at.
we are not connected to anything, and everything is just whatever we do doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We can live to our hedonistic excess, and there's no consequences, because everything in the end will just empty out and be like
Right.
empty space.
So Buddhism rejects that line of thought, as it does eternalism, which is, kind of like more like the concept of uh, a creator, God that created everything, and um, mm, elaborate on that too.
The creator God, like in traditional philosophies, and therefore, theistic traditions, religious traditions, uh, again, it's a mechanism of conventional mind, right? If things exist, they had to come from something, be created by something. So the concept of God, the primal cause, the creator, but then there are things that get attached to that, like he can liberate us, he can give us this and this, we can pray to him and he will absolve us.
Exactly.
It's like a piece of real estate that we buy with a certain kind of behavior and belief system. Um, but again, if you really look deeply into it, as Western philosophers did look for, since there's been man, there has been metaphysical urges of understanding how things exist. But since we always look within the confines of conceptual mind, where there's subject and object, starting with ourselves, with the belief, I am, like Rene Descartes postulated, uh, 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 I think, therefore I am. So we have this existence model, and the non-existence model is just, the opposite conceptual structure. If
Right.
something exists, something doesn't exist. These are the two polarities of the same formula.
Right.
When something doesn't exist, it's only because we have the concept of it exists, right? Then of course we can negate it, because that's what the conceptual mind is capable of doing. It is an inference. It's never a direct experience, right? We believe it because inferentially somewhere we pick up on this idea, and if it suits, I feel like if it suits our purpose, if we want to do whatever we want to do and feel like there are no consequences, we choose a lot of times in the holistic position. If somebody comes out and says there's nothing but atoms, molecules, whatever in space, it's the same kind of, it's another basis for that kind of a system. The thoughtless universe without any sentience. Sentience is just a fluke of material nature. So, nihilism on one side, and then this strong theistic pattern on the other side. And that's kind of like an amplified version of I am, but there must be something superb and better than I am, that has all the powers, has all the omniscience, has, this and this and this. We impute that concept with these personal qualities. And often, of course, theistic systems have this like Father God Creator, or Mother God Creatress, etc., etc. We draw from our conceptual systems to fill in the blanks for these big kind of archetypal concepts, I would say.
Exactly. So Buddhism exists between those two things, neither within either or. But going back to karma, Tinley Norbu Rinpoche says one of the greatest nihilistic misunderstandings is the mistaken belief that karma means our destiny is already decided and that we do not have control over our lives. Karma is misconceived by nihilists as just a support for unrealistic spiritual idealism, a fatalistic justification for life's difficulties, and an excuse for passivity. Karma is misconceived as that. Believing in karma does not mean that we should accept any circumstances and leave them as they are. That's a very important point. In relation to ourselves, just as if our hair and body caught on fire, we would try to extinguish the fire as quickly as we could, we must try to do whatever we can to be released from the karma of negative circumstances. In relation to others, just as a mother who sees her child drowning in a river would try to do as much as she could to rescue the child, belief in the karmic system implies that we think we can influence the destiny of others through intention and activity. The wish to try to prevent negative circumstances and suffering, and to cause positive circumstances and happiness for all beings is important within the karmic system, because it creates the seed of pure compassion and the right point of view. Any action taken in response to karmic situations is not only a reaction to previous karma, but creates the seed for future karma. That's very important. Any action taken in response to karmic situations is not only a reaction to previous karma, but creates the seed for future karma. Belief in the karmic system is not an excuse for accepting whatever happens, but an impetus for creating what we wish to happen. Nihilists may believe that as much as we intend to cause a certain result, another result may occur unpredictably. In these cases, we may be unable to identify the connection between cause and result. And nihilists may use this to try to disprove karma, but actually the reason that ordinary beings are unable to determine the exact connections of karmic causes and results is only due to their obscured and limited perception. But this is as unreasonable as saying that if the results cannot be immediately observed, any activity is useless. Whether or not sentient beings believe in or are aware of their consequences of their actions, they are always creating karma. When results cannot be foreseen or causes cannot be traced, it is only due to the limitations of miscalculated judgment and perception. Even when we try with intention to cause a particular result, another result may occur instead, which happens because of previous karmic effects that influence our circumstances. The causes and results that we notice are only temporary and conspicuous aspects of karma within samsaric time and place. But karma is not only occurring within these obvious circumstances that we notice, it is endless and continuous. Because ordinary mind, which creates karma, is endless and continuous. Ordinary mind, which creates karma, is endless and continuous. So his name is Tinley, but it's spelled Tinley. Norbu, Norbu Rinpoche. He's actually the father of a Zonsar Khyentse Rinpoche, who we've talked about many times in this class. Okay. Victoria's going to speak for a while, and then we're going to sit and meditate. And then, if you have questions, you can put them in the into the chat. No, the Q&A button. Okay.
So it just, as a quote that Michael read, when we truly awaken to understanding interdependence, another word for it, especially the intrinsic reference, on an external level, we call it cause and effect. On an internal level, we call it karma, because our body, speech, and mind, from our mind, on the basis of the kind of mind that we have, the speech and the action creates karma. When we start to understand karma, we begin to have a first glimpse into the nature of conventional reality. We've been speaking about conventional truths in terms of cause and effect, or karma, cause and effect, because it's a truth that we can first hear it from a teacher, we can get a great explanation, and we can continue understanding it and try to come to a direct experience of it on our own. We are supposed to receive teachings by hearing, pondering, analyzing, and then taking it into our own sphere, doing the work on our own. The teachers can only point us the way, but the work has to be done on our own. We have to experience directly these kinds of things for ourselves. So I'm reading from a book that's called Being Human and a Buddha Too. And this is based on Longchenpa sevenfold mind training for a sunlit sky. And the quote I'm going to read is a commentary by Adzompelo Rinpoche. Once again, to what Michael was speaking and reading from Tinley Norbu Rinpoche, everything living as well as everything without life arises from causes. This is how ordinary phenomena all around us come to be. These things are conventional truths, and they come about through one thing: relying one on another. It's a tiny little glimpse. When we start to make the experience that we are in it all together, it means our wisdom mind is starting to click in. Every moment and every time that we have this ignorant mind of thinking we're here all by ourselves, it's just basic ignorance speaking at us. It's the basic ignorance that actually gets us to be a samsaric being, because as the title of this book says, being Buddha and a human too, suggests that we actually have two things going on at the same time, and we do have two things going on at the same time. We have Buddha nature, and covering it up like mud is our conceptual mind, our dualistic mind, our self-grasping mind, the mind of me, the cause of all suffering, the ignorant mind, the mind of self-grasping that believes in me substantially existing, disconnected and alone, self-reliant and independent, or lonely and hurt but by itself in its own little cage. That is a mind of ignorance. That is the cause of suffering. Whenever we rely on that perception of the self, mine, for me, I need this, he is wrong, why is the world not giving me what I want? These are all the causes of ignorance. The mind is the basis, our intentionality, our way of seeing the world is the basis for how we act in it and how we react to the world. The world is a direct mirror of our mind. So if the mind is angry, everything we see out there is scary and terrifying and belligerent. Because when we look with terror out there, all we're going to see is the terror staring back at us. When we have a jealous mind, all we see in the world is what we don't have, that we must have, something that always makes us feel half empty or completely empty, something without which we cannot live. We feel like we don't have enough. And yet, in fact, we have Buddha nature. We have beyond what we need. We have the absolute. We have Buddha nature. What else is there to say? We have everything that we have ever needed. We have it all. And yet, when the mind is ignorant, and the basis of ignorant mind is, first of all, this self-grasping, this belief in the I. And the second, that mind of grasping goes together with the 5 afflictions, really 3 afflictions. The affliction of arrogance is related to ignorance. This kind of conceptual stances. Oh, I understand better than everyone. I know better than everyone. That is the deep-rooted ignorance. That's just really not knowing how things really are. That's like the basic misunderstanding of how things exist. Things don't exist, they inter-exist. We can only sit here as Michael and Victoria sit in this house, wear these clothes, eat this food, breathe this air, because everything is interconnected. We arise together with all things that are connected to us. Conscious things and, things without mind, physical things, physical phenomena. But everything arises together. That is an understanding. That is like a wisdom mind. When we begin to know that, our wisdom mind is clicking in. Mind of ignorance is the mind that kind of leads you to think you're all alone. You exist as this independent kind of a solid thing. This thing you call me, etc., etc. That's the basic ignorance, and that basic ignorance is the cause for suffering. Now, what can break that chain of causality? What can disrupt this existence of misery and suffering? Because every time we act out of mind of self-grasping, give me this, I want this, I need more, give me more, etc., etc., I am angry, they are wrong, all this kinds of, this mind of affliction. What can break that chain of causality? Because when we look out into the world, out of 1 affliction, 5 afflictions, and 84,000 unvirtuous states that are caused by concoction of these afflictions, that's why Buddha gave us 84,000 teachings as an antidote to counter 84,000 unvirtuous mental states. What can break that? What can replace that? How can we access our Buddha nature? And that's where bodhicitta comes in place. But we really have to understand, as beginners, karma, cause, and effect. We have to understand very, very clearly, not just on an intellectual basis. We have to make an experience, direct experience, over and over and over, where we become convinced that my kind word dissolves a negative situation. My kind mind creates virtuous circumstances, etc., etc. We have to create that experience. So without, if we only have this interdependence, only as this intellectual kind of a thing where we feel superior and we say we know, we understand better than others, and yet it's just another conceptual prison. If we don't really make this experience of we are in it all together, we are constantly, being is a river of experience, a river, that is always happening and occurring. And if we don't understand it, we will always be creating nothing but suffering, because either we understand it and we start to loosen the conceptual coarseness, our coarse conceptual mind of me, I know how things are, this is that, this is conceptual coarseness, and the Buddha told us to loosen this conceptual coarseness in order to even have glimpses into wisdom mind, into our own nature, because our base nature is wisdom mind. That's why it's infinite. That's why we can have infinite folly, because the nature of mind, it's infinite in its capacity. But as long as, it's overshadowed by our ignorance, it's just infinite folly instead of like infinite wisdom. So what can loosen this mind and change the negative causes that create negative life for us? Another word for which is, or samsara, another word for which is suffering, right? And here's what, Adzom Rinpoche says. Your desire to practice. So without a cause, there can be no effect, no fruition, right? So if we want positive results, we want good life, we have to seed positive causes through positive mind, with positive intention, speech, and conduct will obviously be that as well. And so only positive seeds will grow a tree of positivity. Like I said last time we met, in nature, seeds, fruit, trees never make a mistake. You're not going to put an apple seed into the ground and it's going to make a mistake and come out in the spring as an orange tree. That never happens. But it happens with us all the time. We say unkind words to someone. We take away we take something away from them, but all we expect back is like wonderful things to happen to us. That's just ignorance. There's nothing but ignorance. And so without a cause, there can be no effect, no fruition. Your desire to practice is a cause of your ability to benefit others. Worldly desires, the me desires, are about your own happiness. Seeking to help others releases the limitation of purpose you place around your actions. So if we are asking ourselves, what is the counter? What is the opposite effect and the opposite cause of suffering? It is shifting to the mind of benefiting others. What can possibly dissolve self-grasping if we don't place our mind on the benefit of others? There is no other remedy. That's why it's not about being a nice guy. It is really, if we want to get out of the ocean of suffering, we have to have a different mind as a cause for different things to happen in our life, for different effects to arise in our life that are not suffering. Focusing on self only yields more suffering. It cannot lead to awakening. Your desire for practice, on the other hand, Rinpoche means by practice benefiting others, the mind of benefiting others, the mind of bodhicitta. Your desire for practice, on the other hand, can bring happiness to everyone, including yourself. And it can only happen like this. We have to be included with everyone else. This is understanding interdependence, karma, cause and effect, interdependence, how things arise. This is conventional truth. This is the big difference. So direct your mind to this purpose and accomplish it, since intentionality is necessary for accomplishing anything. A cause that is authentic and right gives rise to an effect that is also authentic and right. We need confident understanding of this principle. Intention and desire alone are not enough. Okay, so just a concept, holding a concept, grasping to a concept is not enough. We have to implement it. And from our implementation, we will experience direct results. We must train in actual methods that bring about awakening. And the methods, in the beginning, the methods to beginners are described as the things to adopt and things to discard, right? So what do we discard? This thing that we call renunciation. Many people have huge misconceptions about renunciation. They think renunciation is when we turn away from the world, we sit in some kind of meditative equipoise, looking down on all the schmucks below us, our feet not touching the dirt, we're in this lotus, we're separate, that's just nothing like before, like I said, arrogance is a form of ignorance. This is not understanding interdependence whatsoever. So what are the things to adopt and what are the things to discard? We're discarding afflictive minds, and we're discarding the ignorance of believing in a substantial self. Because in fact, no substantial things exist. Things arise as parts and pieces of other things. That's what it means, causes and conditions. Nothing is on it, arises on itself. Things arise as a result of other things. We flow in and out of other things all the time. I couldn't sit here without oxygen. I couldn't sit here without food. I couldn't sit here without drink. I couldn't sit here without clothes. All, infinite number of things allow for this moment to take place. Things we cannot see. That's why Tinley Norbo Rinpoche said, in our limited state as we are right now, in this conventional mental state, we cannot see the infinite number of causes and conditions that have to arise for a single moment to happen. But they do. And we have to, experience that for ourselves directly. We have to meditate on it, and then we have to implement and see that wisdom in action. So we never abandon the world. We abandon the afflictive emotions and the mind of self-grasping. Because mind of self-grasping is like the fist, and the afflictive emotions are like the 5 fingers. That's one thing wrapped in these 5 things. What do we adopt? Is we try to work through our Buddha mind, the mind of bodhicitta. There's relative bodhicitta. We have to habituate ourselves to undo the me grasping. We have to habituate, and first it seems very artificial, the mind of benefiting others, right? Because if we are not experiencing living through the mind of benefiting others, all we're doing as a result of that other mind is creating more suffering. So we have to try other means and methods. When we adopt a mind of benefiting others, a world starts to soften. Things seem very, very different. And I have to tell you, it's a superpower when we can stand in front of somebody difficult, and instead of calling them an enemy, we can wish them well. If we can have a moment like that in our day, in our life, when somebody difficult stands in front of us, especially habitually difficult, like a difficult parent, a difficult partner, a difficult boss, even a difficult child, and instead of almost feeling this animosity and the weight of anger and, I wish this was different, and it's being, consumed in this mind of self-grasping, why can't I have a better child? Why can't I have a kinder mother? Why can't I have a partner who's more considerate? If for a moment we can stand and wish them well and say, I am in this dance with you together. I wish you all the happiness in the world. I wish you to be happy without any causes of suffering. If we can have a moment like this, experience a moment like that, not just like plan for it, mentally, visualize it, but never really go through the experience of it. But if we can go through the experience of it, if we can actually have that moment, it is a superpower. Because why I call it a superpower? Because it is the mind of all the Buddhas. It's our own mind, and it is the mind of all the Buddhas. And that's the first time that we will ever experience what interdependence really means. Because when we soften, when our heart softens, the atmosphere of this whole belligerent situation softens. We change the energy inside, the energy outside, together with us changes. Remember, interdependence. I am not encapsulated in some invisible force. My energy seeps out there, and it can either intensify the difficult situation or it can soften it. We have to understand, in terms of the other person, that their behavior is based on their mind. Uh, you know, can we blame a snake when we step on it for biting our leg? Can we blame a scorpion for biting our leg? But, Garchen Rinpoche always says being born a snake or being born a scorpion, having that kind of body is a result of mind of hatred. And until that hatred is exhausted, until that karma is exhausted of having that kind of body, there can be no change. And so when we stand in front of a difficult person, we have to understand, just like a moment ago, we were polluted by our own anger. They are polluted by that. With anger, they're polluted by fear and all other kinds of things that come in that bag of ignorance. It's like being with a difficult person is like being in a room with a snake. Can we really truly blame them for not seeing things better, for not knowing things better? It's like expecting, a 3-year-old to understand the complexities of all things. So we should never leave it up to others. We have to train our own mind. We have to experience interdependence in the opposite way than self-grasping. We have to, if we want to experience happiness, we have to experience and train in bodhicitta. If we go into a difficult situation with mind of bodhicitta, we arm ourselves before going into a difficult situation, or into every situation with the mind of bodhicitta, we will experience a different universe. We will experience a different everything. We will experience even a different body than the one that we experience now. Even to our body, we have to have gratitude. It gets us here, it gives us rest, it takes us to our destinations, etc., etc. It's like a way of looking at every little thing at every moment in life with gratitude and understanding, and compassion will arise, automatically out of it. But in the beginning, it's a little bit artificial. It's good to practice the 4 immeasurables. It's great to practice Tonglen instead of engaging in practices like he's fat, he's tall, he's this, he's ugly, he's wrong, etc. Just Tonglen, non-conceptual meditation practice. And see what a big, big difference it is not to have those things that arise from our mind and pollute us right back. It's like we're producing garbage and it flows right back into us. Every time we say he's bad, he's this, he's shit, he's that, that crap flows right back into us. Understanding interdependence is understanding that. It's understanding that, nothing just goes one way and doesn't come back. It's like we are self-polluting all the time. We're creating suffering in the midst of which we stand with our own 2 feet. So if we want causes for happiness, if we want happiness, we have to put out virtuous causes in terms of our intentions. That's why intentions matter so much. Based on our intentions, we will get the results. So whatever we engage in, whatever is happening, instead of looking at the other person or believing in this kind of course, this is how it is, and I know I'm looking directly at reality crap, we look back here and we say, what is the state of my mind? Forget about appearances and coarse belief, and I know how it is through my senses. That is, of course, just a child's understanding. That's why we call them appearances. That's why we never see reality on a conventional level in a very clear way, because it's all subjected through the filter and lens of our mind. I mean, forget about objectivity. The only objectivity we can have is understanding interdependence. And if we arm ourselves with that, we arm ourselves with patience, with generosity, we go out into the battlefield, so to say, with a mind that's ready. We will change the course of everything. And the expectation of thinking that we're going to do unvirtuous things and get positive results back is just insane. If we want to bring sanity into our life, we have to practice in every moment by having mindfulness.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to sit. Just to run through this quickly. So you're sitting, if you can, on the floor, cross-legged. If you do, use a cushion to get your hips either in line or above your knees. It might be more comfortable to have your hips above your knees if you're starting out. If you can't sit on the floor, you can use a chair, but make sure your back is straight and your legs should be kind of at a right angle as much as possible with your feet on the floor. Back is upright, straight, but not rigid. Same with the neck. Head is tilted slightly, kind of in the line of the angle of the bridge of your nose. Mouth is closed, teeth slightly apart, tongue resting where the upper teeth meet the roof of your mouth. Breathing through the nose unless you can't. Then breathe through your mouth. Left hand open, right hand on top like this in the lap is good. Hands on the knees is good. Some people like their hands resting on the knees like this, however you're comfortable. The shoulders, even the back is straight, the shoulders are relaxed. They're not like back like a soldier. They're just relaxed. Eyes are open. Gaze resting on whatever's in front of it, lightly resting on it, not staring intensely, not, spaced out of focus. So from this pose, let's do 3 normal breaths, not deep breaths, not shallow breaths, but just normal relaxed breaths. And let's do 3 more and focus your attention where this air is moving, where the nostrils meet the upper part of your, above your lip. Okay, we will begin. And the techniques we use, basically, if you're really new, focus your attention on that place where the air is moving in and out. And when you become aware of the fact that a thought has arisen, you say to yourself, back to the breath, focus your attention again on that space. You may need to do that, or you most likely will do that many, many times. And the other technique is we imagine our mind, which is what we're focusing our attention on our mind. What's, what is arising in our mind. We imagine our mind as very spacious, blue, calm, limitless, stainless blue sky. And we settle into that image, settle into that calm, natural mind, sky-like nature of mind. And if a thought arises, it's like a cloud that has emerged from that limitless, calm, clear blue sky. And we can, once we're aware that a thought has arisen, we don't judge it, we don't push it away, we don't follow it, we just watch it dissolve back into that sky, not leaving a trace. Or we say back to the breath and focus our attention again. And we repeat these as needed. Experience that limitless, calm, sky-like nature of mind. And by that I mean relax into it, relax the body into it. And relax the mind into it. It is the mind. It's the nature of your mind. If you need a deep breath, take one. If you need to shift physically, like something doesn't feel right, or adjust, do it and settle back into the posture. And settle back into that sky-like nature of mind. Great. All right. So now if you have any questions, there's in the toolbar, there's a Q&A section and you can ask questions.
May I speak to just one more thing that I meant to mention today? You know, we always speak on the topic of relative truth. Of course, relative truth, understanding interdependence is the same as understanding emptiness. You know, this, if we're splitting it up into like two concepts, or if we think of it in a very coarse conceptual manner, we are completely off track. Understanding that as things arise interdependently, they are empty of substantial existence. That is a way of understanding emptiness. That's why it's true truth, but it's the union of true truth. It's like, you know, two ends of one thing. Yes, of course, you know, the Buddha three times turned the wheel three times with the teachings, and the first turning of the wheel, Buddha gave us the emptiness of the self. So the Four Noble Truths, the way that we get out of suffering is by understanding that the self is an imputed thing. When we look for the self, there's really no self. We cannot find it anywhere. All we have is like the river of experience. And so, you know, it should help us loosen our attachment. Second turning of the wheel in Mahayana, so that's Theravada, first turning of the wheel. Mahayana, second, the Bodhisattva vehicle. Second turning of the wheel, Buddha gave us emptiness of phenomena. This formulation of Prajnaparamita, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. In other words, it's impossible to understand form without understanding that, you know, its antecedents are in, you know, infinite array of other kinds of things, and so kind of empty of substantial existence. You know, that is a philosophy that we use pretty much, you know, in all the traditions and all the schools of, you know, Buddhism today, besides the Theravada. And third turning of the wheel, Vajrayana, there was a way that the Buddha spoke about emptiness, not in the sense of lack of inherent existence. Yes, of course, always lack of inherent existence. Just as I said, we always use the Prajnaparamita view as a philosophy to practice, you know, anything outside of the Theravada Buddhism. But the Buddha spoke of emptiness as a union of emptiness and luminosity or clarity. The luminosity speaks to the aspect of knowing the mind, because after all, when we look at appearances, you know, how do they occur? They occur through experience, and experience implies it's always within awareness. The world arises within awareness. You know, everything arises within awareness. You know, just as I arise within awareness, the entire environment arises within awareness. And so not awareness how we think of it in dualistic mind, but awareness awareness beyond conceptual dualistic split. So the Buddha spoke in the Vajrayana in the third turning of the wheel, which is what we practice in Mahamudra and Dzogchen teachings, luminosity and clarity, and that is what speaks to to dismantle the whole notion of nihilism, that there is just this, broad, spectrum kind of nothingness, like an empty shopping bag or dead empty space. Luminosity, the cognitive element, the knowing element of awareness, the space of awareness, is the basis of the Vajrayana teachings, and it's actually on the basis of that we can attain Buddhahood, because we already have the cause. The cause is intrinsic to our awareness. For that, you need to get empowerment, you need to get transmission, and you need to get liberating instructions. And to get those three for the pointing out of that mind, of the mind's nature. So we distinguish between mind, ordinary mind, and mind's nature. The nature of the mind is the same as saying, our Buddha nature, liberated, infinite, complete, etc. For that, you need a qualified teacher to give you pointing out instructions. So we are not qualified to speak about that. However, please pursue and, look into these things of getting this ultimate level of teaching, because it is quintessential. And Nick is going to post a very, very beautiful, small, short book that goes through the stages that deals with the it's called The Stages of Emptiness by an incredible Kagyu Lama. I read this book many, many years ago, rereading it again. But for those of you who are really interested in, you've either had the pointing out instructions by your teachers, or you are inspired to get the pointing out instructions, pointing out the nature of mind. It's a great book to look into. Thank you.
The list of books is on the Solidago Productions website. This discussion brings up the question, don't you think looking too deeply into it is silly? By silly I don't mean dumb, but hard to grasp. Cristobal, can you elaborate which discussion exactly what you're referring to? Because I'm not sure what you mean. What if, no, let's see what specifically he's referring to, because I don't know what part of the, people write in questions at different points in the class, not immediately. What if wishing someone happiness, whose happiness comes from causing suffering for me? We're not talking about pleasure, like sadism, someone who's a sadist who gets pleasure from hurting someone. That's not happiness. You have to kind of delineate. When we talk about male beings have happiness, we're talking about being free from suffering. To have that kind of need to inflict pain on someone and getting some kind of perverse pleasure out of it is such a negative state of mind. Someone who has that kind of quality, or desires that, lives in a very, very dark, negative, destructive place that ultimately causes them pain. So you have to really delineate when we say male beings have happiness, the causes of happiness, we're talking about someone who, living in their Buddha mind. You understand? We're not talking about just like, someone who's, their happiness is like to have $1 billion so they can, live at the expense of others or things like that. You know what I mean? That's not, an indulge in sensory pleasures. That's not the happiness that we're talking about. You have to understand that.
I think also it's very important to distinguish between how we conceptually characterize a person when we think we have great psychoanalytic ability, etc., etc. But beyond that kind of labeling conversation, which helps us and, helps us maneuver and, act in good, clear ways, knowing how to avoid and, what to adopt and what to discard, so to say, conversation. We also have to have another level of understanding that a person's mind like that is like the example I drew with the scorpion and the snake. It's a person's mind that is still extremely unripe, because Buddhahood is like complete blossoming, right? And a sentient being's mind with afflictions and self-grasping is like a closed little seed that hasn't opened yet. So to have forbearance and to have patience, just not saying this mind is good or bad or this or that, but like understanding this is a mind that's still so like in its very baby element, that it derives, what you call pleasure or, some kind of a perverted notion of happiness from such deep, deep negativity. Believe me, if that person's mind was more awake, was more clear, was more aware of its own nature and the nature of how things truly are, that mind would never seek to exist on a basis that is so deeply mistaken. And so it's very important, instead of labeling good and bad and this, on one way labeling to understand how to avoid pitfalls when, being with it, but on another way, understanding it beyond conceptual structures, knowing that this is a mind that's extremely in its very infantile, place. Because we do have individuals that are filled with anger, filled with negativity, their minds are still so like seeped in this kind of, and all they do with that negativity is bring suffering upon themselves. The mind is like a big mirror. You put out negativity out there is no hope of getting anything but that back. So that's how we have compassion, because we understand that that mind is just, it's like a sick mind. You cannot blame a mind like that for not seeing, for not knowing. It's still so closed. It's still so, Buddhists just call it unripe. That's why, like, instructions, empowerments, transmissions, they call them the ripening. When the mind ripens, it wakes. It's like the word Buddha means awake. It's ripe. It's up. It's fully grown. That's what a Buddha is. Buddha is not like a name like Jesus or whatever another. Not to insult anybody. It's not. We're not talking about a person. We're talking about a state of mind. A Buddha is a state of mind. We have historical Buddha Shakyamuni, but we have had countless Buddhas. It's anyone who awoke, whose mind went into that full blossoming mode. It is a state of mind. It's not, it's not a name for a person. And so understanding the person you're dealing with as someone who's still like very, like deeply asleep, deeply unopened, very kind of like new mind, even though it can be in a very old body. Could be in the body of 100-year-old woman or man that we have to call our grandparent or mother or whatever. But the mind itself could be very infantile and still very, very unawakened. Because, a mind that doesn't know how much it harms itself through that behavior can only be a mind that's like that.
Why do we meditate with eyes open? Because you live most of your life with your eyes open. So this, working with our thoughts and emotions with our eyes open is good practice and training for, bringing this kind of mindfulness and awareness into life, into our day-to-day life, basically.
And kind of like a mechanical element, when we meditate, we rest our senses in completely open, infinite kind of manner, right? So we're not doing what we usually do, like bring the power of the sun, which is our awareness, on the blade of grass. That's when we look at an object. In meditation, we loosen that power of the sun to kind of like rest on everything. So even though we're meditating with our eyes open, we're kind of feeling or going into this sensation that we're seeing through walls. Our eyes are placed on everything, on everyone, like the sun. So we loosen this kind of focus on an object, because we're not doing, there is placement meditation, shamatha meditation with an object, but here in this meditation that Michael guides is we're meditating with our eyes open, and that goes, by the way, for all the senses. When we hear noises outside, we're kind of placing all of our senses to feel and rest in an infinite capacity. And that gives us that softness that when we're dealing with an object and we're very honed in on it, we can remember our state of meditating where we place our gaze very, softly, loosely like that,
The name of the prayer at the beginning is the Four Immeasurables. I can understand approaching the world with a positive mindset. However, contending with physical pain is a gray area for me. Managing chronic pain and post-op care. How can we step into a medical situation that we know is going to be physically painful and maintain positive mentality? I practice deep breathing and nervous about impending procedures. I mean, I think it's very natural to be nervous about, procedures. And, one thing that they speak a lot about in Buddhism is that when we go through suffering, we're purifying negative karma. And negative karmic seeds from our past, from this life and other, you know, lifetimes before that. So that could be a way, a context that, you can use as you know, to prepare yourself, and while you're going through it, to remember that, to um, give another, perspective on what you're going through.
It's also very useful at that time to break through the darkness of fear, because fear has to do with grasping to the self. Is to do Tonglen meditation. Think, all it requires is that you think of all the people that are going through the same identical thing as you, and then it diminishes your own suffering. So in other words, you can transform your suffering, you can transform your fear, your anxiety, which of course is natural, and there's nothing to say about it, but you can transform it into practice right on the spot. And so that'll give you the power that you need to get through it. Release the mind of that self focus, and shed the light on the situation of exactly everyone who's going through exactly the same thing like yourself. It really reduces our own individual suffering. And again, as Michael said, it is a purification. We all have to go through things of that nature. Our body is just like that. It is subject to change, old age, sickness, and death. So there is no, this is where we are. These are the vessels we have right now. And it's a ripening. These vessels are the ripening of our karma. But it really helps not to bring the power of the sun on a single blade of grass and only think about myself and my own suffering here and now, because the intensity of that is unbearable and enormous. So to reduce that intensity and unbearable quality, we shed that sunlight of awareness onto others in that same situation. Or just doing Tonglen for everyone who's in the hospital, who is in the next rooms, getting procedures side by side by you, because we are interdependent. There is, a lot of what you're going through is shared by many, many, many countless others. And that will give you a lot of ease. And again, instead of just using your energy of your mind to just focus and be swallowed by fear, you can transform it into like a magnificent practice.
The visual technique you described, noticing the thought and letting it evaporate into the sky like mind. Do you also practice that in real time during your interactions with people? When they say or do things that stem from their own jealousy, anger, suffering. Um, yes, but you're also, practicing that about your own jealousy, anger, negative emotions and things like that. Really becoming aware of how your own negative emotions are triggered by circumstances, by other people or circumstances that you're involved in. Absolutely. This kind of practice is you're cultivating a level of awareness of your mind, how you're responding, so you can have some kind of control. Victoria, spoke earlier about what to adapt and what to discard. Well, you know, you can't adapt and discard things if you don't know that they're happening. You know what I mean? It's like you could say, "Yeah, I'm gonna make a decision not to lash out at people in anger," but unless you have the ability to see that anger as it arises and be aware of it and transform that and to respond in a different way, you're going to react out of that, right? Because that's habitual response. It's very ingrained. So without the ability, without the mindfulness and without that awareness of what's going on, you're not going to have any chance at it. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to respond differently to somebody who pushes your buttons, you know. So absolutely, to answer your question, definitely yes. Just to clarify, mirror of the mind. Do you mean it's a reflection, meaning what we experience in our reality is an indicator of what's happening within ourselves? For example, I always encounter negative situations in people, and therefore my thoughts and feelings are negative. Is that what you mean?
I mean that we bring our experience of what we consider the external world arises very deeply from within ourselves, unquestionably, based on the nature of our mind, the way that we perceive appearance, the way that appearances and the outside arises has everything to do with our interior state of mind. I know, and I'll give you an example. To my teacher, to our teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, to some of the teachers we've had teachings, when the person's mind is ripened, meaning free of self-grasping and free of the five afflictions, they don't look at us schmucks and say, oh, these are such bad people. They look at us and they see children, mentally speaking, in bodies of, old adults and old people. They're liberated from this kinds of, continuous string of judging. He's bad. I see all this negative. These are all negative. These are all bad. This doesn't arise for them because internally they are no longer driven on the basis of the afflictive emotions, because there is no question that how the world arises for us arises through our judgment, through our perception that is fueled and fed by the state of our mind. And if our state of our mind is very densely constituted out of self-grasping and and the five afflictions, this naive belief that I see things as they truly exist has to be shed. That's the first kind of like subtle moment of understanding interdependence, that if I'm seeing and everything is negative out there, I am a part of it. We have to start there. It's very, very important. So it's not, it's like for a moment, not bringing that baby mind and saying, I see everything as it truly is because I have this clear, beautiful mind, and I am here, over here, and what I'm seeing out there is I'm seeing it through complete objectivity and clarity. If we are engaged in that kind of self-deluded behavior and belief, it's difficult. And lots of things arise as a result of that. But the minute we start to understand even a little bit about the relative truth of interdependence, and also just understanding that things don't appear. The reason why we call them appearances is because things don't arise as they appear. They appear like that to me, to my mind, because in my mind I have habitual propensities that process them in this particular way. It's like wearing, a set of glasses with yellow glass and saying that all reality is yellow and I objectively see everything is yellow. We have to take off those glasses. So we have to shed our opinions. There's nothing objective out there. And yes, we do arise. Our mind arises together with what appears to it, unquestionably. That's why it's always said to us, we have to become a good vessel for learning teachings. It's useless if we are, filled with a negative mind and we just want to consume more and more information that we think will make us give us superpowers, because now we'll know more. We can, bring all this light of a flashlight to every dark situation. We have to become appropriate vessels by changing. We have to know very well our intrinsic state, and knowing starts with not looking out there and believing that we know world objectively and believing in things that we see, but rather starting to look here and knowing the state of our mind. We have to loosen that conceptual coarseness of objectivity, and we have to loosen a thing that we know through our conceptual mind. That's where we get very, very sidetracked and deceived. Our concepts will play all the tricks on us. But being open and letting reality happen while knowing that we're happening together with others, together in the situation, it's a good beginning. Yes, absolutely, knowing that we are co-writers, co-creators, co-actors, co-costume designers, co-set designers of everything that happens that we call reality. It never happens separately on its own, and we never happen separately on our own away from that. Everything happens, we are happening with it, and it happens with us and through us, unquestionably.
Okay. For those of you, if you're interested in any of these topics, on the Solidago Productions website, which you use to register, there's a list of teachers and books. And we encourage you to make some connections to these authentic teachers from the authentic lineages. And they have websites, they have YouTube teachings, they have books, they have teachings in person or via Zoom that you can participate in and be part of. But, those of you asking where to begin or how to get into this, go to the source. These teachers that are still in the world and with us, that's where this is going to happen. This kind of, progress and working a path, spiritual path. With that, let us close by dedicating the merit from today's class to the benefit of all beings by saying dedication prayer. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of suffering and
bounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Nick Solidio,
and
our
happy
producer.
holidays.
See you soon.